yourself. I hope that you are listening to your body and doing everything you need to give yourself everything you need. So, if you do not know me, my name is Fatima. I am the co-birther and steward of Love and Healing Work. And today I want to talk to us about some of the concepts that we follow at Love and Healing Work. And at Love and Healing Work, we talk a lot about consent and doing great work without harm. In order to do great work without harm, we must be in consensual relationship with ourselves and others. But what does it look like to be in consent with ourselves? So a lot of the times we don't check in with ourselves to see if we have the capacity, to see if we want to see if it aligns with our, let's just say, our journey, our mission, whatever it is, our passion, right? Sometimes we'll just say yes, and the yes isn't real in our bodies, our mind, our spirit. It's just a yes because shame, fear, guilt, we don't want to let somebody else down, people pleasing, something like that. So I usually invite people to think about what consent is. How are you consenting to engaging with yourself and others? From there, I usually guide people through the concepts of what it means to be in discomfort and then what it means to be harmed. A lot of us think that just because we're uncomfortable, we're being harmed. And when we are harmed, sometimes we don't know that we are harmed and we just think maybe it's just discomfort. So there's an ebook that goes into briefly those two concepts. But have any of you ever been in a collective or wanted to join a group or been in a church or I mean even your family and something happens? There's this disharmony. There's a harm that's been caused, but there's no way of talking about it. Like how do you talk about the disharmony in your family, in your relationships, in your community, in your church? How do you discuss the harms that have been caused by someone's behavior? How do you do that in real time? What does it look like? What's the process? How do you all agree to come together to honor that conflict will happen, disharmony will happen, but it's how we choose to engage when that disharmony and when that harm happens. It's important. So, for me personally, and within a loving healing work, which is not different for me, I have learned to address situations within a short period of time in which I agree on with the other party. So when I'm working with groups, I tend to invite them to think about when occurrence happens, when something happens and it's harmful, how long do we wait before we address it? I like to wait between 36 to 72 hours is usually what I invite people to consider. How are we showing up without harming ourselves and others consensually? So sometimes we're not always ready to talk about things, right? We're not always grounded in what we're doing. So what does it look like to flow from a place of non-harm when we're engaging in conflict with ourselves and other people? So first, I usually invite people to ground, like in your breath, in your body. Ask yourself, yes, I want to do great work, but how do I do it without causing myself or others harm? That's usually the first thing that I invite people to think about. The other thing that I invite us to think about as a collective is how do I want you to talk to me? So if I caused you harm, how would you want me to talk to you? And when somebody causes me harm, how would I want them to talk to me? Right. And then having this conversation with people and us consenting to say, okay, when I caused you harm, or if I caused you harm, or if there's disharmony, then we're going to wait 36 to 72 hours before we address it. And then when we come together, we're going to come together from a place of love and kindness. And I don't know about you, but many people that I've met in many groups that I've engaged in, they don't talk about how we're going to talk about disharmony. We don't talk about how we're going to address that you hurt my feelings or the way that you're moving through the world is causing harm. We don't have these conversations because they make us uncomfortable. But I always like to invite people to have these conversations because humans, we disagree. As humans, we're not always going to see eye to eye. As humans, we're going to cause each other's harm. What do we do when we do, though? What happens as a community when someone in the community causes disharmony? Do we just throw them away? Or do we actively seek to engage our elders, to have an intergenerational conversation, for us to have solutions, and all of these things be things that we create before we actually go into disharmony? What does it look like to create harmony or systems of harmony so that when disharmony happens, we already have a way of going about it? So, what does that look like? I am currently involved in a collective in which I've been accused of causing harm, right? But in this collective, we haven't talked about what does it mean to address the harm. So there's a harm that has been accused, um, but then how do we talk about it? How do we address it? How do we come together? How do we allow the conflict to bring us closer to love instead of conflict taking us apart? We've been conditioned to believe that because we are in conflict with one another, we have to be combative. We have to destroy each other's names. We have to put each other out. But what does accountability look like from love and healing? What does it look like as a collective for us to come together? And I'm really asking this question because there's a lot of us coming together to change things, right? Where we don't like the government, we don't like what's happening with disaster relief, we don't like how things are going. So we're starting to create collectives, we're starting to come together as groups of people, but we're not talking about how we're going to engage as we do come together. The mission isn't bigger than our humanity. The mission is never bigger than our humanity. Just because we are working on something and that thing that we're working on is grand and big and it really means a lot, it does not mean that we don't honor that we're all living our own human experiences. We all have our own triggers. We all experience trauma, and most of us are going through some PTSD. So when hurt people, what do we do? How does that look? At Love and Healing Work, the thing that I like to invite us to do is to really think about it. Let's think about as we are building these collectives, as we are creating innovative ways to go about the same solutions, as we are coming together to be the change that we want to see, how are we doing it when we are in conflict? How are we saying that we want to process conflict together? How are we saying that we're going to do it and agreeing to do it so when conflict shows up, we have a way that we all agreed upon? All of our ancestors used to have a way of dealing with conflict. All of our ancestors used to have a way of addressing disharmony. And we're continuously building groups of beautiful human beings to do beautiful things, but we aren't willing to check in to say, so how are we going to handle the minds and the hearts and the bodies of the humans that are continuously sharing space with us? I invite you to think about it. Are you causing harm in your collective, or is there harm being caused in your collective? And if so, how do you address it? If there's no harm, that's amazing. But what do you do when a harm does occur in your collective? How do you all agree to address it? Have you all consented on talking to each other a certain way, gathering a certain way? What does that look like? And not from this colonized perspective of what most of us have been colonized to believe, not that way. The way that centers intergenerational connection, the way that centers love and kindness, the way that honors all of us have our human experience and we're doing the best we can with what we have. What does that look like? At Love and Healing Work, we guide people through these experiences and join the Love and Healing Work Collective that will be rolling out July 24th in the Night Mind Networks. And we have more conversations about these things. We'll allow people to have really in-depth conversations about what does it look like to create non-harmful engagement with your group. Everything isn't going to be rainbow and butterflies. People are going to get in each other's nerves. People are going to cause harm. That's an unfortunate reality. But what do we do when it happens? How do we continue working towards the mission and not harming ourselves? And then have a wonderful day. Thank you for watching. Love.